Namaskar everyone. As part of the IBC ecosystem, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code ecosystem, we are today going to discuss the details, the roles, responsibilities, the code of conduct, the expectations of the stakeholders from something we call as the Committee of Creditors. Committee of Creditors is one of the most important institutions as part of the CIRP process under IBC. We have prepared a small presentation also for the same, and I'll take you through the presentation in the next 30 minutes to understand the responsibilities, the expectations, the critical role which a committee of creditors plays in the entire corporate insolvency resolution process. We are aware the major players in the corporate insolvency resolution process are the insolvency professionals, which are predominantly acting, they are service providers which are registered by the board, and they act as in the capacity of the managing director of a firm which is undergoing insolvency. We have registered valuers who value the assets of the company which is undergoing distress and which is forming part of the corporate insolvency resolution process. And a good valuation can ensure that the company can be resolved, whereas a bad valuation may lead to a good company also getting liquidated, or vice versa also. We have an information utility, which is the first of its concept in the country and also in the globe, in the sense of matchmaking between the borrowers and the creditors in terms of the data which are there in the system. And this is able to put down the default which is there, so as to speed up the entire CIRP process. And then we have the Committee of Creditors, which I'll explain little more in detail. The IBC has brought a paradigm shift in terms of the debtor in possession model to the creditor and control model of insolvency resolution. In the earlier processes prior to the IBC, when the company went into NPA, when the company was into trouble in terms of the financial distress, the bankers used to take various methods under, say, SICA or SURFACI to resolve the case or to get back recoveries of their monies. Under these cases, once the litigations were going on or the recovery processes were on, the possession of the unit continued to remain with the corporate debtor. However, the CIRP process under the IBC has changed it completely, in the sense that the moment a CIRP is admitted against a company which is in default, once it is admitted by the adjudicating authority, the control is snatched away from the existing set of promoters and management and given over to an insolvency professional and to be run on a day-to-day basis by the insolvency professional under the guidance, under the checks and balances of the Committee of Creditors. As mentioned, the control vests in the Committee of Financial Creditors through a resolution professional. The report of the Bankruptcy Law Reforms Committee, they dwelt into this issue in detail and finally came to the conclusion that the appropriate disposition of a defaulting firm is business decision and only the creditors should take it. There are so many times the questions being raised as to why not operational creditors, why not certain other government agencies, why not certain other people, the promoters, the employees of the company have a role to play in the insolvency resolution. But what the BLRC, based on the various discussions, based on the lengthy deliberations they had on the subject matter, they decided that the Committee of Creditors is the most well-placed kind of an institution to dispose of the resolution process of a defaulting firm. Now the Committee of Creditors, the members of the Committee of Creditors, which are predominantly the financial creditors, in certain of the cases when the company does not have any debt, then maybe the operational creditors come into play in terms of the Committee of Creditors. The largest 10 operational creditors then form the Committee of Creditors. However, most of the cases, it's the unrelated financial creditors who form the Committee of Creditors, and they have various roles and responsibilities and they wear different hats as is shown in this particular slide. They are the custodian of the process which is run, the corporate insolvency resolution process, which is run as part of the IBC. They are the custodians of the process. They have to ensure that the process is being run as per the rules, regulations and the laws of the land. They are also taking care of the interests of the secured financial creditors because they are representing the secured financial creditors like the banks, for example, the State Bank of India. So they have to take care of the interests of the State Bank of India also. Also, they are fiduciaries of other creditors. So it's not that if there's a representative of a State Bank of India on the Committee of Creditors, they will take care of interest of their own institution at the cost of other stakeholders. It's a equity which is there among the stakeholders as part of the IBC process, wherein you cannot discriminate one stakeholder vis-a-vis the other. So there has to be some kind of equilibrium in the process which is what also they have to ensure in terms of taking care of the interests of the other stakeholders who they are representing on the committee of creditors. They are fiduciaries of all other stakeholders also, be it the suppliers of the company, be it the operational creditors, be it the tax departments, etc. So their interests also have to be taken care of by the committee of creditors as part of the process. They have complete control over the assets of the business, akin to the board of a company, as a corporate company which is there, like the board which is running the company. So it is similar kind of a thing, which is the powers which are entrusted to the committee of creditors, and they have control over, they take over all the assets of the company, and they have control over the assets, and they are running the business also by way of the checks and balances. They are also the guardians of public interest. We are aware that large capital of the country is invested into these assets which are created, the companies which are created, say a power company which is there, a large infrastructure project which is there. It is based on the kind of capital which the country has put into it or invested into it. Large ecosystems and value chains are developed, the supplier mechanisms are there. So everything is dependent upon the company. The employees of the companies are also equally important stakeholders. So the committee of the creditors has to take care of interests of such people also. They have to take care of the public interest, that the jobs are not lost and the value chains, the ecosystems, the supplier vendor chains which have been created, they continue to remain in focus and they are not wasted. And whatever capital has been invested into these projects, that is utilized to good use, the cash flows are generated and they contribute to the growth of the economy of the country. Moving on, there are large expectations of the various stakeholders from the committee of creditors. Few of them is what we have enumerated here. COC plays a very crucial role as a custodian of public faith, public trust, and takes almost all the crucial decisions. So they are akin to the board of the company, like I mentioned, who has to run the company in a fashion that all the interests of the stakeholders are protected to the extent possible, and the value of the assets of the company which is undergoing CIRP is maximized. So to that extent, it's a custodian of public faith or public trust. They are acting as a trustee on behalf of the various stakeholders, and with lot of confidence of the people, lot of confidence of the employees, their families, the various other stakeholders post into their competency and abilities so as to come out of this thing, resolve the company to the best possible, taking care of the interest of all the stakeholders. So one of the expectations is that the committee of creditors would be utilizing application of the highest standards. Whatever standards of integrity, whatever the standards of various other traits are there, they would be utilizing those standards to the best extent possible, and of the highest standards, the things would be included as part of the CIRP process. Second is the duty of care. Once they are trying to resolve an asset, they have a duty towards the assets and the various stakeholders in terms of taking care of the interest of everyone, so that there is no cause of concern to any of the stakeholders vis-a-vis the other stakeholders, which is also one of the objectives of the code. Primarily, they have to try to resolve the asset rather than trying to go into liquidation to recover the monies, because resolution is a long-term game which will help all the stakeholders, whether it be the employees, the suppliers, the vendors, the employees' families, the banks, the governments in terms of the taxes which will be there, and it will be contributing to the growth of the GDP also, rather than probably killing a unit by way of, which is an easy course of action, by way of liquidation. Fairness is another important trait of the entire process. Whatever actions the committee of creditors takes in its wisdom, they have to be fair to all the stakeholders. They should not be discriminated between one vis-a-vis the other, and whatever decisions taken, whatever actions are taken, it has to be very fairly applied to all the stakeholders. Next point in terms of expectations is transparency. Whatever steps the committee of creditors is taking, they have to be put down in a very transparent manner, so that tomorrow if they are questioned also, there is a logic, there is a justification, there is a reason which is available, and the committee of creditors is able to justify the decisions which it has taken. So everything has to be transparent with logic, reasoning and objectivity. Follow due process of law is another important expectation from the committee of creditors, wherein while discharging their obligations, their duties, their functions under the code as part of the committee of creditors, they have to take various steps in line with the law of the land. So whatever processes of law are there, whether within IBC or various other laws which are there, they should follow these laws. They should follow all the processes, and as far as possible, there should be no attempt to circumvent the process of the law. So that is what also is an important trait of the committee of creditors, what they are expected to do as part of the process. Excuse me. The critical decisions which the committee of creditors have to take as part of the process, of course, they have to take several decisions. However, the most critical decisions, some of them have been enumerated below, as to whether a company which has gone in as a CIRP, which is following a CIRP process, whether it should be liquidated or whether it has to be resolved. This is one of the most crucial decisions which a committee of creditors has to take, because their decision would really impact the lives of the employees of the company and the other stakeholders and even their livelihoods. So in case there is a viable company which is decided to be liquidated by the committee of creditors, it will be disastrous for the economy, for the employment, there will be job losses, plus the contribution to the growth of the country and the GDP would not be there, and there will be all around loss for everyone in the long run. Choosing the best resolution plan is another critical decision, because once prospective resolution applicants, they submit the plans for a company which is going into the corporate insolvency resolution process, then which of these is the best resolution plan is again to be decided. There are several permutation combinations which are possible, out of which the committee of creditors would take out the best plan, which will be in the long term interest of all the stakeholders. Next is the haircut. Once a company which comes into CIRP, we are all aware that it is already bald. It does not have much assets on its books, and the haircut which has to be taken by the financial institutions, the operational creditors, that has to be decided by the committee of creditors based on the resolution plans which it has received, and that is again one crucial decision which the committee of creditors has to take. Committee of creditors also has to decide whether the change of management would be able to bring about the requisite results which are expected by way of the resolution plan, or whether the resolution plan would be able to take care of the debt of the company and the other stakeholders as we go along on a long-term basis. It should not be a temporary kind of a solution. What we are looking for is a resolution of the company on a long-term basis. So that is another crucial decision which has to be taken by the committee of creditors in all its wisdom. Value maximization, which is also one of the objectives of the code, the committee of the creditors has to really take into account various factors to ensure that the value of the corporate debtor is maximized by whatever decisions they are taking. They have to balance the interest of all the stakeholders, which is again an objective of the code, wherein the stakeholders, be it the operational creditors, the financial creditors, the employees of the companies, the tax authorities, and the other stakeholders who are there, their interests have to be balanced in a manner that it is a win-win situation for all the stakeholders. Moving on, the role of the COC, it is put down as a creature of statute by way of the honorable courts in the case Numetal Limited versus Satish Chand Gupta and others. Powers and duties of the committee of creditors are provided in the code. It's named as put down as a statutory institution and discharge a public function. The COC plays the role of a savior, responsible for rescue of viable CDs and closure of unviable ones. Both of these things are important in the sense, if there is a company which is facing distress, it is viable but not able to do well because of certain reasons which are temporary in nature, then the responsibility or the objective of the committee of creditors would be to turn it around to resolve such a company so that it is good for everyone. At the other hand, we have a company which is unviable, and though it is not doing as well or even just able to service the debt also, but the problems is more long-term structural in nature, then it will be better to close down such a companies and release the resources which can be channelized for further growth of the economy, and that will be for the benefit of everyone, that such companies can be closed down. So it's the commercial wisdom of the committee of creditors which really decides whether a company has to be closed down, a company which is facing financial distress, undergoing CIRP has to be closed down, or can be permitted to go on, can be permitted to be resolved. COC, as I mentioned, needs to be fair and transparent in its decision making. The manner of rescue is also as important as the rescue itself. It's not that the committee of creditors only will be rescuing the company, it's only also the matter. It's the means also which are important rather than the ends only. Conduct of the COC and its members must be above board because they have to justify the exalted position, the supremacy which the code is according to this particular institution. So they have to justify this particular position by being transparent, by being fair, by taking decisions, utilizing their wisdom, their experience, and which really cannot be challenged by anyone. COC has the last word. In the sense, once the COC decides that this particular company has to go into liquidation or this particular company has to be saved, it has to be resolved, then this is some kind of a commercial decision based on its own wisdom, based on the holistic factors which are available, which the committee of creditors has taken, and which really cannot be even challenged by the courts. That is what is the supreme position which has been accorded to the committee of creditors under the code. That is what we say, that the committee of creditors is an institution of public trust. All the stakeholders which are there, they are looking towards the committee of creditors for its decision, and decision based on various parameters and factors. There is no judicial interference which is possible once a committee of creditors decides to go a particular fashion or a particular way based on its own wisdom. And there is no review of the commercial decision which is possible. Having the committee of creditors having decided a particular decision, the review of this kind of a decision is not possible. However, having said that, the kind of a supreme position which is there, the decisions of the committee of creditors cannot be challenged. The trust which has been imposed into the abilities and the competency of the committee of creditors, there are certain questions which are being raised in the ecosystem in terms of whether the wisdom of committee of creditors is absolute or is it subject to any checks and balances, code of conduct, etc. So these are another few points which we will dwell upon as we go along. There are certain common concerns which have been noted since now we are more than 5 years old. The IBC was implemented, was enacted in 2016 May, and it has completed more than 5 years since its enactment. So there are certain common concerns and observations of the adjudicating authority which are there in terms of appropriateness and fairness of the decisions taken in a CIRP. They have been debated intensely. The dependence which is being laid down on the commercial wisdom of the COC. Several judicial pronouncements have clarified the role and responsibilities of the COC and established the primacy of the commercial wisdom of COC, as mentioned earlier, in deciding the fate of the CD undergoing a CIRP. The COC as a body is totally new institution. It is still evolving and understanding its role in greater depth in detail. Various concerns have been raised in few of the cases, in some of the cases by the adjudicating authorities in terms of the capacity and conduct of the committee of creditors. Few instances have been put down below. Of course, there are several other instances wherein the adjudicating authorities have come out hard on the conduct and the capacity of the committee of creditors. Some of these cases are Andhra Bank versus Sterling Biotech and others, Bank of Baroda versus Messrs. Sister Kumar, Africa and others, Bhushan Power and Steel Limited, Gitanjali Gems, and Jindal Saxena Financial Services Private Limited versus Mayfair Capital Private Limited, and various other similar kind of cases are also enumerated. Common concerns which are there of the stakeholders are enumerated to some extent here, wherein the competence and attendance and decision making powers. What is happening is that there are representatives of the banks and financial institutions who are the financial creditors. They are the members of the committee of creditors and they have voting power in proportion to the outstanding debt which they have lent to the particular corporate debtor. So these people who are present there, they are expected to decide and vote on certain critical decisions which have to be taken for the sustenance of the company or for killing or for liquidation of the company. So these people who attend the meetings, the members or the representatives of the banks, they have to have adequate powers to decide on the spot, is what a common concern is there. The people who are nominated by the banks and institutions onto these committee of creditors certain times do not have the requisite powers and they have to go back to their institutions or banks to get those approvals, and which delays the process. Violating the provisions of moratorium, certain times during the moratorium process when it's over, when it's going on as part of the process, the banks, the CD bank accounts and assets are frozen. Taking repayments during the CRP process is another kind of a common concern which is there. The banks go ahead and freeze the assets of a corporate debtor, which is not permitted under the code. Stepping on the role of an IP, the insolvency professional has certain duties, roles, responsibilities. So there is certain trespassing onto these roles and responsibilities as part of the process. Something like determining claims, influencing appointments, which are actually not the role of the banks or the committee of creditors. They take it upon themselves to actually decide on such matters also. There is an inadequate cooperation which has been noticed in certain of the cases, like appointments of transaction auditors, delaying approval of process costs, not considering the interim finance. Interim finance is also one important kind of a part which plays in terms of reviving a corporate debtor which may face temporary problems on account of shortage of funds. So if adequate funds are provided by way of interim finance, then probably the CD can be rejuvenated, can be resolved. So the banks are not willing to consider interim finance in many of the cases, not deciding in a timely manner, delays are there. Backdoor negotiations which are not permitted with the residual applicants or erstwhile promoters. Even if you have to do those things, it has to be in a very transparent manner and with the kind of approval of all the stakeholders, in the sense all the members of the committee of creditors in the know of the committee of creditors. Concerns of confidentiality both as a FC and RA also have been witnessed in certain of the cases. Presently, the conduct and decision making of the COC is not really subject to any kind of regulations, instructions or guidelines, etc. Many stakeholders have expressed concern over the code of conduct and probably are proposing that there is a need of a code of conduct for the committee of creditors. Even the 32nd report of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, they have also recommended the same thing, stating that, I'll just read out, there is an urgent need to have a professional code of conduct for the committee of creditors, which will define and circumscribe their decisions, as these have larger implications for the efficacy of the code. IBBI in that direction has already launched a discussion paper on this subject in terms of putting down certain draft code of conduct in line with the best practices, and that was put in August 21 for public comments, and a lot of comments have been received which are being examined. In terms of the draft code of conduct and the best practice, some of them is what I'll quickly run through. A member of COC will maintain integrity. Integrity is very important so that the faith and confidence of the stakeholders remains with the decisions which the committee of creditors take. The COC must not misrepresent any facts or situations. Whatever facts are there, whatever situations are there, they have to be put down as it is without any so-called value add by twisting the facts, etc. So facts have to be put down as 2 plus 2 equal to 4 rather than anything else. So there have to be no misrepresentation of the facts and situations. Must maintain objectivity in exercising decisions. Like I mentioned even earlier, whatever decisions are taken by the COC, they have to be very objective. They have to be open to scrutiny at a later date. They have to be transparent so that people can understand why a particular decision was taken and why not any other decision was taken under the situation. It must disclose the details of any conflict of interest. In case any member of the committee of creditors has any kind of conflict of interest with the other stakeholders, then or whenever he comes across this kind of a conflict, it should be disclosed transparently to all the members and subject to the internal processes and the kind of approvals by the members, it probably can go ahead. It should not, the committee of creditors members should not acquire directly or indirectly any of the assets of the debtor. This is a big conflict of interest which may take place in case the committee of creditors in their individual capacity or for their organization, they directly or indirectly try to acquire any asset of the corporate debtor. Even their relatives and all should not be permitted to do so. It should not adopt any illegal or improper means. That is totally a no-no. No illegal means or anything which circumvents the law should be possible to be incorporated, should be possible to be implemented. So they should not adopt any illegal or improper means to achieve the objective of the code or to achieve the objective of the committee of creditors. Next, moving on. The committee of creditors should cooperate with the insolvency professional, because the insolvency professional is another equally important stakeholder in the process. It runs the company on a day-to-day basis. So there has to be complete cooperation. It's like the same team. They are working for the same team. They are on the same side. So there has to be no friction between the the insolvency professional and the committee of the creditors, they have to work as a synchronized team in a perfect manner while discharging the duties under the code. The committee of creditors should not influence the decision or work of the committee. One of the members, two of the members should not try to probably influence particular decisions so as to make them favorable to certain stakeholders at the cost of other stakeholders. They have to disclose the existence of any pecuniary or personal relationship. Any personal relationship which is there, or any pecuniary kind of relationship which is there with the corporate debtor, the committee of creditors members have to disclose it with the stakeholders who are entitled to this distribution as soon as it becomes aware of it. They have to ensure that decisions are made without any bias. Again, more important is that they have to be without bias and they have to be also objective and in a very transparent manner, though the stakeholders have confidence in the capabilities and the abilities of the commercial wisdom of the committee of creditors. So they have to do those decisions without bias, without favor, fear, coercion, undue influence or conflict of interest. They have to maintain transparency in all activities and decision making. They have to have complete knowledge of the roles and responsibilities assigned to them by the code. Until unless they are aware about their roles, responsibilities and all, they may not be able to do justice. So they have to be clear as to what are their roles, responsibilities, how they have to go about it, what are their decision making powers, what are the powers of the other people who are there on the committee, etc. Sufficient authorization to participate has to be there so that they can take decisions on the spot and do not lead to delay in the process of insolvency resolution. They should not conceal any material information. Whatever facts and figures are available to one committee member, they should be disclosed to the committee so that a decision can be taken based on the discussions, based on all material facts which are available on the table. Ensure that timelines provided in the code and regulations are not breached. The problems with the earlier laws prior to the IBC was there were no timelines which were maintained. IBC was probably the first kind of a law wherein strict timelines are there. So the committee of creditors people have to ensure that timelines are met and the regulations, the timelines regulations are not breached so that it does not delay the insolvency process. They should work in a manner that it facilitates the appointment of various professionals under the code, maintain confidentiality of information, at all times respect the privacy of the information which is there. They should not withhold release of insolvency resolution process costs. They should work in the collective interest of all the stakeholders. They should not either directly or indirectly interfere with the functions of the IP. So these are the various important facets which are there of the committee of creditors, how they have to operate, what all they have to do. As one of the most important institutions under the code, they have to have probably a code of conduct, we feel. As going forward, this is at a draft stage only, which is a discussion stage. Maybe we'll in conjunction with the Government of India announce a code of conduct along with the other authorities also for the bankers, which will be utilized on a best effort voluntary basis. Thank you everyone. Namaskar.